Hello my little learners, you can call me Lovegood, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Here are just a few things before we get started. Today I'm presenting you with Chapter 5 of How to Raise a Child Nemesis by sabertoothhousecat on AO3, titled Just School Things. But anyways, thank you for tuning in to listen to me. As always, tags are in the description as well as warnings, but that's enough of my rambles and jambles, and let's get right into the fic. This is the summary. Summary. Some tedious responsibilities of being a parent finally catch up to all for one. Izuku helps? Let's go right into the fic. Izuku slapped his homework down on the corner of not Oji-san's desk. He then walked away and got a spinny wheelie chair from the other side of the room and pushed it over to not Oji-san's desk. He climbed up on top of it.
English,
he said,
is not my strongest suit.
And you are here, why? Not Oji-san asked coldly. As of now, Izuku had a plan. His plan was, 1. Get not Oji-san to teach him English. 2. Slowly break through not Oji-san's shell to what had to be a very nice person underneath. He was determined that this had to be true. 3. Bring about world peace. These items were loosely connected. He had not thought the plan through very thoroughly. After reading through not Oji-san's diaries and doing some personal investigation, he decided not Oji-san was indeed not his uncle, and not even related to him at all. Upon that discovery, he subsequently realized that he had essentially been kidnapped by the biggest supervillain of all time. He didn't know why this had happened, but since, after all, he wanted more than anything to become a hero, he had decided to take this as an opportunity. He could take down the biggest supervillain of all time all by himself and save lots and lots of people in the process. And then All Might would think he was super cool, and he'd be admitted into UA as the youngest student of UA history, and everyone in the world would think he was really powerful and strong and amazing. But first, homework.
I am here because you know English.
Izuku tapped his pen on the paper.
And I need help.
Not Oji-san went very quiet.
This is part of adoption, you know, Izuku said. Helping with homework, spending time with your kid, and so on.
As if it was painful for him, not Oji-san echoed. And so on. Not Oji-san glanced at the paper. You wrote the D backward.
Aha!
Izuku observed his mistake. He erased the incorrect letter and rewrote it the right way.
Okay, and then why are the G and the Q the same?
They are not. Izuku pushed his paper insistently towards not Oji-san. Not Oji-san made a long, irritated, exhaling noise. He took the paper and squinted at it. You've written the curve of the G in the wrong direction. It curves in, not out.
Why?
Because that's how English works, not Oji-san said. Now leave me alone.
I have more questions.
Not Oji-san made an aggravated sound, but he also didn't tell Izuku to go away, so Izuku considered it an all-around win. He pointed at the next problem he was having. Not Oji-san explained, and on it went. Toshinori had not expected the final fight with All For One to go so well. Sure, he had to spend half a month in the hospital, and had been told he wasn't allowed to do any heroics for a full month after that, but he'd recovered fine. And other than a slight limp in his deflated form and a bit of a residual cough, no one was any the wiser to what had happened. He could argue that there was something almost suspicious about it, like it hadn't been the triumphant success he'd wanted it to be, but he couldn't admit that to himself, couldn't come around to it, so he let himself believe that All For One was dead. He had to, or he'd lose it. There was just no other option. His friendship with Mirai was frayed, but not irrecoverable. Mirai strongly advised Toshinori to retire, now that All For One was gone, but All Might couldn't just up and disappear. A slow and steady phase-out was probably the better way to go. But then there was the issue of finding a successor for the quirk and all that. Toshinori had decided to not think about that though, because he was busy trying to recuperate. It was proving difficult due to him having an inability to hold still. Recovery girl's words, not his, and a penchant for self-sacrificial behaviour. That was Mirai's. The months passed by quietly, and as time passed, he started to settle into the knowledge that he really had won, Just because they'd never found Ulf-1's body didn't mean he hadn't died. That was what Toshinori had to believe to keep going. So he did. When Midoriya had come to Ulf-1 with a nervous expression and an important school thing in the form of a sheet of paper in his hands, Ulf-1 could not have imagined that 1 week later he would be walking into Midoriya's elementary school for parent-teacher conferences. And yet, "Where's your classroom?" he asked Midoriya, who apparently wasn't supposed to come to such events, but had to tag along so he could show Ulf-1 the way. This would have been humiliating if the situation hadn't felt so unreal. Ulf-1, at a parent-teacher conference. What had the world come to?
"I'll show you,"
Midoriya said, confidently leading the way. The school seemed normal enough, white paint on the walls, neatly labelled doors. He hadn't anticipated the amount of children's art hanging on the wall. "Are any of these yours?" he asked, gesturing at some historical projects with nasty handwriting.
"No,"
Midoriya said, affronted that he'd even suggest such a thing.
"This is like 8-year-olds' stuff. My project is hanging up in my hallway."
He shot Ulf-1 a look like that should have been obvious. Ulf-1 felt his eye twitch.
"So, all you do in parent-teacher conferences,"
Midoriya explained, as if Ulf-1 hadn't done a deep research dive last night on the very topic,
"is sit and, talk to the teacher about my grades and personality and stuff. And they should tell you how I'm doing in the class and some things to think about when I do my homework, I think. I'm not really sure what happens. Maybe you eat candy."
Ulf-1 suspected that they would not be eating candy.
"This is my hallway,"
Midoriya said, turning down a hallway that looked exactly like the other hallways. The handwriting on the artwork looked a little better here, Ulf-1 supposed.
"We did hero projects a month ago. I wanted to do mine on All Might, but you hate All Might, and anyway, everyone wanted to do All Might, so I did Best Genius instead, even though my teacher didn't know who that is."
Midoriya stopped in front of a picture with an actually decent drawing of Best Jeanist, although the thought of Midoriya creating such a thing under Ulf-1's roof was sickening.
"See?"
Ulf-1 peered to decipher Midoriya's writing. The essay seemed to extend several pages past what everyone else had done, given the stack of papers glued to it.
"I got carried away,"
Midoriya said without a singular ounce of sheepishness. "I see." Ulf-1 really did need to stop this hero obsession, nip it in the bud, cut it off before it swelled too far, if it hadn't already.
"And this is my classroom,"
Midoriya said, already at the door. It looked fine enough. It had an irritating cutesy nameplate on it and a picture of the class that featured a hugely smiling Izuku, despite an obvious black eye. Clumsy kid. Ulf-1 peered in the window on the door, but there was another family already there, so he stepped back to wait with Izuku. Having to wait was irksome. He could, he reasoned, just murder the family inside, but maybe that would ruin more things than it would solve. Fine. He could be patient.
"Also,"
Midoriya said, more softly now,
"just so you know, my teacher doesn't really like me very much. Most of my teachers don't like me very much, so that's probably a good thing for you to know. Maybe my mum told you that already, though."
Inko hadn't mentioned any of that when Ulf-1 had spoken to her on the phone. "What, do you start fights or something?"
"I don't start them," Midoriya said. "They just kind of happen."
This seemed in character, given it was exactly the reason Ulf-1 felt the need to abduct Midoriya in the first place. The door opened and the other family stepped out, talking quietly to each other. The mom gave Midoriya a weird look and then Ulf-1 a weird look, and kept walking, lowering her voice to talk to her husband further. Ulf-1 reached for a hearing quirk, feeling weirdly protective, but before he could activate it, Midoriya's teacher poked his head out of the classroom and gestured Ulf-1 in.
"Good luck,"
Midoriya said gravely, like this was a matter of life and death. Ulf-1 couldn't even find the brain space to respond to that, a feat, given how much brain space he had available. Midoriya was too baffling a being to comprehend in one sweep. "So, you're Midoriya's uncle?" the teacher asked, settling down behind a neat desk. "Yes, and his current guardian." Ulf-1 took the chair opposite. "I admit I've never had to go to one of these meetings before." "I'll keep it short," the teacher said warmly, shuffling his notes. "Midoriya is a bright student, and he gets good grades, but he is incredibly distractible, and has a muttering habit that hinders his classmates. He's behind when it comes to socializing and connecting with his peers." Ulf-1 had a tactic. It includes agreeing with everything the teacher said to get out of here as quickly as possible. He's always been a loner, Ulf-1 said, smiling pleasantly. If only it were just that, the teacher said, shaking his head. Starting fights. This seemed unlikely to Ulf-1. Causing a ruckus, hurting other students. Hurting them? Ulf-1 repeated, unable to keep the incredulity out of his voice. Oh, yes, the teacher said, obviously misinterpreting the source of Ulf-1's confusion. He probably thought Ulf-1 had never even considered such a thing for his good, sweet Izuku. In fact, Ulf-1 was incredibly aware of how destructive Midoriya could be, but it seemed unlikely he would use any of that at school. He was an irritating, smart, pesky kid, but he was also gentle and obviously wanted more than anything to be a hero. The idea of him picking fights was ridiculous, although it did fall in line with typical heroic behavior, just not Midoriya's typical heroic behavior. Having a late quirk development can be difficult on anyone. Izuku is quirkless, Ulf-1 said, his confusion growing. The latest quirk development in history books was age 8. Some researchers argued for 9, but it depended on the source. Midoriya was almost 10. We're still holding out hope for him. You know how difficult quirklessness can be. It already made him such a troubled child. Ulf-1 blinked at the teacher. Blinked again. He would have laughed if he wasn't desperately trying to reconcile his earlier plan and tactic with the situation before him. Midoriya was definitely quirkless, and definitely not starting fights at school. Perhaps he has an invisible quirk, Ulf-1 said in a last-ditch attempt to keep hold of some sanity. How can he improve in his class performance? The teacher rustled his papers again. Yes, well, by the time the meeting was over, Ulf-1 had a headache and was seriously considering taking away the teacher's useless quirk just so the ungrateful man could have a taste of it. He walked out of the classroom to find Midoriya set up on his laptop, hard at work. What are you doing?
I was thinking it would be fun if I could have teachers' access to my report card, Midoriya said, not looking up.
Ulf-1 sighed.
What did he say?
Midoriya asked, hitting enter and then making a face. For one of the first times in his life, Ulf-1 hesitated. The teacher had said plenty of things Midoriya probably already knew, but didn't need to hear a second time. He had also said Midoriya was unusually sharp for someone his age, particularly since he didn't have a quirk assisting him. Yet.
Never mind. Midoriya clicked his laptop shut and smiled at Ulf-1. I'm a terrible student and I like kicking people.
He actually said you're very intelligent. Midoriya shook his head, climbing to his feet.
He thought I was cheating for the first month or so of class, and then he had me take a test in a separate room and I got better scores than anyone anyway, and he had to admit I was doing it all on my own. People are weird. I want to go home now, okay?
Home. Ulf-1 frowned at Midoriya, that word echoing around in his skull over and over again. Home. It didn't mean anything, probably. Just that Midoriya wanted to go back to the bar, but didn't want to say out loud in his elementary school that he wanted to go to the bar, but home. He was reading too far into this, and it tired him. Alright, home, then. Alrighty, my little learners, that's a wrap of this one. So, parent-teacher conference. I love this chapter. You can see, the underlying quirkless discrimination that people hold, especially that, weird line of, holding out hope that he gets one. I love Midoriya having to show him around. The little, essay on Best Jeanist. I love this chapter. And Ulf-1 being like, oh, this teacher's pissing me off. What is wrong with this motherfucker? You know? So, my little learners, this is a little reminder you might have something you need to check. I hope you all have a fantastic time, wherever and whenever you may be. Day, night, dusk, dawn, low tide, high tide, whatever it is for you. You can call me Lovegood, and that was Chapter 5 of How to Raise a Child Nemesis by sabertoothhousecat, titled Just School Things on AO3. Again, the link to this fic will be in the pinned comment by me on this video, and tags are in the description, as well as warnings. Bye, little learners.